Welcome, everybody. Everybody having a good time in Houston tonight? All right. So, hopefully you've all had, some of the guys said they just came for the booze tonight. So if that was you, hopefully you got a drink or two while you were here. But hopefully we have some good content to run through with you today as well. And I'm really excited. So you really don't want to hear me talk and ramble. And I don't tell jokes very well. It's my kids. But I want to bring up our panelists. So we have Brandy Armstrong with Valentium, and I don't know what's on the slide here in a moment, but we'll try to make sure you sit in front of your face, but wherever you sit now is fine. So we have Kevin Coker from Proxima CRO. Lance Black with TMCX. Now, some people think that we look alike. I'm not sure. So cute. All right, and then we have Tommy Cooper with Cooper Consulting. And I think we might have to share a microphone here, so that's okay. As Nick mentioned, Greenlight Guru did a state of medical device industry survey. Over 500 people participated. I'm just curious, have any of you read this? Okay, if you have not, you need to go get it. It's free, no charge. It's at the Greenlight Guru website. Just go to www.greenlight.guru, and it should be front and center. If you can't find it, send me an email, jon.speer@greenlight.guru. Yes, I read and answer all emails. So if you don't find it on our website, just send me a note and I'll get it to you. But anyway, some of the things that 500 responses for quality and regulatory folks, and I certainly want to get into that here in a moment, but before I do that, I want each of you to say a few words about who you are, what you do, and go from there.
I'm Randy Armstrong. I'm the CTO at Valentium. My background, I've had about 36 years of medical device development, both in the commercial sector, but also did a few years with NASA. During those years, I've worked in implantables, external systems, diagnostics, therapeutics, and have seen the industry grow and the complexity grow. And at Valentium, what we do are product development tasks. We are capable of helping your product realization, everything from concept all the way through manufacturing. And one of the joys that we have, we're a collection of experienced medical device designers who have just wanted to create more and more impact in the market. So we love what we do. We believe we do it very well. And we're working with companies all the way from a single person pre-seed funding all the way up to billion-dollar market leaders. So we get a diversity of products and diversity of task sizes. Just love what we're doing.
All right. So what does this mic do?
Oh, recording. Okay.
Yeah, it has been recording you the whole time.
I apologize for anything I may have said earlier. You are a good-looking man, John. No matter what the B-roll says. Hey, everybody. Kevin Coker, CEO and co-founder of Proxima Clinical Research. As John said, we have offices here in Houston in the TMC space, also next door over in J-Labs. We provide regulatory and clinical trial services to the new class of rising stars in med device and diagnostics. We've been here for a couple of years. Was part of this panel last year. Love working with this team and really happy to be here again this year. Thanks.
Hi everyone, I'm Lance Black. Wow, that's loud. I have the best job in the world. I get to work with medical device and digital health startup companies who I firmly believe are going to change the face of healthcare. And a number of them are here in the audience. Can I give a shout out to Luca Camp Companies? That's going to change our healthcare system. You guys should be worried. All of you should be worried. Don't grow old. Don't get sick. Just kidding, I love you guys. So I help to manage a program called TMCX. We've been around for 5 years. We've done our 10 cohorts now. And what we do is we help these great, amazing healthcare startup companies find traction in the Texas Medical Center to validate the technology, their business model, and to get that pivotal customer, that pivotal trial to make sure that we all have access to the great care that they're providing. Thanks for having me.
Hi, I'm Tommy Cooper. I'm the founder of Cooper Consulting Service. I founded it in 1986. So I've been developing products for a long time. At Cooper Consulting, our focus, we're an engineering group. We focus on medical product design and development. We like to take things from an idea all the way through the prototype stages, through V&D and transfer to production and FDA approval. So that's the process that we like to do. We don't always get to do that. Our kind of range of things we do, our most complex products are kidney dialysis machines. Our simplest ones are like electronic stethoscopes. We work a lot in the field of maternal medicine area and wearable devices, portable devices. So I actually started my career in 1974. I went to work at Baylor College of Medicine. And that makes me probably the only person on this panel who was designing medical devices before the 1976 Medical Device Amendments were ever passed. So I've been doing this a long time, and it gives me an interesting perspective.
All right, and thank you all so much for being so willing to sit up here and let me grill you with questions that are not on your script. I mean, I'm kidding, not kidding. So, Kevin, you went through this last year. You know how it's going to go. Yeah.
I studied for 2 days for that you didn't ask a single question on.
I read this damn report, John.
I'm kidding.
Okay.
And that's why I have my phone. I'm usually a very on the spot, just kind of roll with it. But I do want to reference this report because there's some really good stuff here, if I do say so myself. The team did a really good job. Actually, if you all contributed to that by answering the survey and the questions, you did a good job. But I want to bring some of that to light. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of the viewpoints of product development and quality. I guess, show of hands, who here is in quality? Who is in regulatory? Who's in product development? Who's in sales? All right, marketing. It's actually a pretty diverse group, so a good mix. But product development and quality, they have different things that are important to them. And to dive in here, just to share some things, from the lens of product development, some of the challenges that product development professionals are facing are shortage of resources, insufficient budget, and lack of management buy-in. And then from a quality perspective, some similar things, budget, the cost and effort of validating new tools and processes, and resistance to organizational change. Those are some of the big deals. So, with those things in mind, what are you seeing? What are your perspectives on those particular topics? And we have a pretty good group of folks here representing a number of different areas, but what are some of the things you're hearing or seeing in your practices or with some of the companies that you're working with? Would you agree with those points, or would you find that there may be some other things?
One of the common themes that I saw in the report was resource limits. And we are seeing that. We recognize that whether you're a big company or a small company, you're going to be resource limited. So one of the things that we recommend is focus maximum ROI. Focus on early system analysis so that you reduce the complexity of the system. Focus on identifying your risks early through standards. One of the things that we do is we bring the standards in early. In case you don't know or haven't read some of our blogs, we consider standards to be pre-validated risk mitigations. They're your friend, not your enemy. They're not a wall or a gate. They are what the industry has thought ahead as risk mitigations. And so we bring those in very early into our preliminary hazard analysis process. And as a result, we're able to reduce the amount of design effort. We design to address those right away. So a lot of it is identifying very early on what are the most essential things for your product development. Focus on those and minimize the innovation or repetition.
You know, the startup by definition is capital constrained, right? And how to allocate those resources is the first question comes to every founder's mind. What's interesting is that you talk to a reimbursement specialist, a quality management specialist, regulatory, all the things that you mentioned, and it's always think about that from day one. Have a plan, consider your regulatory strategy from day one. The earlier the better, and it's at some point you have to prioritize, and at some point you have to allocate your resources. So I think it's particularly interesting in the startup community culture to start with a quality mindset, and that really to me comes down to the leadership and the founders, understanding the nuances of quality, but also the importance and relevance of quality. It's tough though, you know, it's tough when you're in the middle of product development, just trying to figure out, do I have the right technology? Did I really come across an unmet clinical need? What is a regulatory pathway going to look like? And oh yeah, by the way, you should also be considering reimbursement and quality and all these. So I think it's a matter of prioritization that once you set that stage, it kind of is bred through the rest of the company in the early years that company is developed.
That's a really good point. I mean, and just to kind of build on that, I mean, I know a lot of startups that I talk to, they understand they need to do the quality, the regulatory, the reimbursement, but you know they're just building their first prototype, or they're just trying to get to that, you know, that next major milestone, and it's like, you know, we'll do that later. We'll do that later. We'll talk about that, you know, maybe some downsides of pushing that off too far here in a little bit, but it's really good perspective. You gotta have the right priority. You gotta keep things in the right balance.
I'll just chime in. Is this on? All right. You know, we're here for a reason, and that's because of these companies that are trying to. Proximus here for a reason in this space, because it really is tough for these small companies to think about quality systems, reimbursement, all the things that you guys have mentioned early on. You think, oh, I'll deal with that later. But you have to think about it early, and you don't have to think about it in terms of, I've got to put in this very expensive system that costs more than what I'm getting paid. You just need to start out with a couple of simple SOPs. Just make it really simple, and then build that into a quality management system. Make sure that QMS system is Part 11 compliant, because regardless of whether you're 510K or PMA or probably de novo or HDE, you're going to have to be in clinicals at some point, whether you think you're going to have to or not. I've heard there's a QMS that's compliant somewhere around here, but think about it in just getting like 4 very simple SOPs in place. Getting your design control SOP, and that may not be a single SOP, but maybe a clutch of a couple of SOPs. Getting your document management in place. If you're going to be working with suppliers, and you probably are, getting that supplier management piece in place. And then your risk management piece. Think about it in a very simple way. 4 SOPs. Bring in your QMS system and make sure that it is Part 11 compliant. You don't have to do that for a lot of money. It's better to do it early on and try to figure it out later.
So Tommy, as the distinguished person on the panel who has been doing this since before the 1976 pre-amendment, I guess you've seen a lot of change over time. So what do you see as the state of affairs today in product and quality?
Well, from a product development standpoint, you know, so being pre-1976, so then, you know, design control didn't really come in until the early 90s. And quite frankly, engineers are kind of like the Queen Mary, you know, we're going that direction, and they go, we got to go that direction. It takes a while, you know, to make that change and to embrace that decision. But it turns out that design controls are a good thing. It turns out that then they have risk management started coming in after the 2000 and 2007, and it's just started trading into everything. And so it's like, what do we do with this? I've got another layer of stuff. Well, embracing that, now I am a firm believer in all of that. So part of this process now, with all of the risk management embedded in everything, it means that we start that early, just like everyone else is talking about. We employ 7 SOPs instead of 4, but one of the early things we do is the risk management, and that is something that is, if you were to ask me this 10, 15 years ago, no, but now it's the very first thing we do. When we're doing our product spec, our project development plan, the first thing we're doing is hazardous situation list. How do you know what to design unless you know what the risks are? And how do you know what you're mitigating?
Can I ask one question? I have the 7 SOPs you start, I'm assuming, with your clients from day one. You're talking to them and saying this is the value, this is how much it's going to cost, this is the timeline. What do you get pushback on? What is the one where I would think it's the quality piece, but I may be wrong, I'm interested.
Since we're providing the SOPs and it's not saying we're charging you for this, then we don't get any pushback on that. We do have clients, look, it's still a management buy-in situation because I presented those SOPs to some companies, they're going, great, this is perfect, here, let's go with that. They sign up, we start with the process. Others, for an example, this is a project that doesn't go well, I presented those SOPs, they would never sign off on anything, they would never sign off on the design reviews. To put it mildly, after a year and a half, I was on version 15 of the product requirements spec, and we've never gotten a design review signed off. The project failed. So,
And I love the points. I mean, let's be real. We're in a risk-based society, not just from a QMS perspective or from a medical device perspective these days. So we have to kind of lean into that, and there's good reasons to lean into that. How in the world can I design a product if I don't really understand the risk? And so that's really important. The other thing, design control. I mean, I'm a design control nerd. If you listen to any of the Global Medical Device podcast episodes or read anything I've written, I get on a soapbox on design controls. And I'm an engineer, so I come from a world where engineers don't like design controls. You don't have to admit it, but I bet there are some engineers here in the audience that don't like design controls. If that's your stance, my suspicion is you don't like the system and the rules and the red tape that you have to go through in your current organization. You do like design controls because this is the essence of being a product development engineer. It's about designing a product that's safe and effective and meets the indications for use. And that's what you want to do as an engineer. So you do like design controls, you just like the system that you're working within. Really good perspective. So quality, I think, is one of these words that has it's a little cliche today. I think some of the folks in the room probably feel like the internal affairs department at their companies because all those quality people are making me do this again, or they're going to do an audit. And I think it's too bad because, quality, it has subjective meaning and it probably means something to each one of us, but what do you see as important? How do we sort of, reprogram the mind of a medical device professional so that quality is cool again? How do we get true quality to be like something that we're proud of instead of, sort of the joke of the company? Any thoughts about that?
From a development standpoint, I guess the word quality control is possibly a misnomer, and as a result, people feel that it restrains creativity. It doesn't have to. The one thing that I have seen is when you shift from making it a bureaucracy or being a policing action, and you shift it to tools to improve your efficiency of design, you energize everyone. People begin to see that these tools, these methods, help us focus on what's important. For example, in risk management, if you look at a medical device, the majority of the things you have to address are the safety issues, and the development of a new feature is actually somewhat easier than some of the safety features. So knowing that helps you design more maturely. But one of the big things that we do is we don't isolate quality to a department. Quality is distributed throughout the company. Our engineers are trained to be quality reviewers so that one engineer can review another's work. Both of them, one has the responsibility to produce, and the other has the responsibility to ensure that it was done according to standards or the quality processes. And so by distributing quality throughout the company, everyone begins to understand its value, its role, and it isn't just a me versus them type of attitude.
And Tommy, you said something about the SOPs that you help implement with companies. Something along the lines of it really comes down to executive management buy-in. So I guess I'm curious your thoughts on that, and I got to imagine how the culture of quality is within an organization is probably pretty dependent on that as well.
So my view of quality was kind of shaped by one of my mentors early in my career. He said, "I don't do anything for the FDA." I was kind of confused. And so as we discussed, he said, "Look, they provide those guidelines, the GMP guidelines, that's fine, but I don't do things because the FDA gave me those. I do it because it's the right thing for a company and it's appropriate for what we're doing. I don't worry about them too much, and I don't have problems with audits because I do follow their guidelines, but I'm not doing it for the FDA, I'm doing it for the company because it's the right thing to do." And that has been my sort of way I've approached things all along, is doing what's appropriate, and it's never failed me, it never got me in trouble.
Yeah. So I have an analogy back to my days in practice. I think Randy and Tommy were spot on. I don't know that you never made quality cool again. Maybe dressed up in some 80s clothes. That's coming back. But the one thing that I hated as a clinician was every Friday we got a report card, and the report card said, "This is how you're practicing compared to the other providers in the clinic." And that was our quality control measure to ensure practice consistency. And by every standard possible, everybody hated it. Everybody thought this is me being policed in the way that I practice healthcare and the way that I treat patients. Until we had a new leader come in, and her perspective wasn't necessarily she implemented new practices, but she had a different perspective. She said, "This is the way that we're going to be the best practicing clinic in the nation, is we're going to follow these guidelines because we know they come from experts who know how to practice and done research, who can inform us, and that's a trickle-down effect so we can be the best performing clinicians possible." And so I see quality as a leveling ground. It's an opportunity for us to perform at the most efficient and most beneficial process possible as an engineer, when everybody raised their hand, I was actually surprised. Everybody's responsible for quality in my mind. Engineers, marketing, obviously quality, regulatory as well. And so Randy, what he said was spot on. I think it resonates if the culture is quality and everybody's responsible for it.
Kevin,
if I had anything to add, my staff's sitting here wondering, like, what's he going to say? And everybody knows that the people that work for me know that I'm a big reader. And one of my favorite management books is by a guy named Max Dupree, who was the CEO of Herman Miller. And it's a quick read. I'm not really into management books, but if you have any, throw them out the window. Go get this book. And it's very short. It's about 100 pages, and there's a key thesis in this book about making a quality product. Everybody knows Herman Miller is the best furniture manufacturer in the world. And the key that they said of success was to listen to their employees. And that certainly includes folks in quality. They said it was the key differentiating factor of the entire company. It wasn't where they were based. It was about the culture and building in quality. But if you listen to what he's saying through the entire book, it is about listening to what the employees have to say about the product that they're creating and building that in from the very beginning. So Max Dupree, Leadership is an Art. It's the best management book ever made, but it has a lot to do with this. And I disagree with Lance. I think quality is getting cool again. You guys are the coolest guys on the block. You just go to your website and you can tell.
Thank you. Good perspectives. I want to talk a little bit about the technology, and I think really what's sort of kind of still surprising to me. I mean, it's 2020, and let's be real, the medical device industry has just discovered YouTube, right? Podcasting is still new in the device space. It's cool. It's cool. So we're not, as a people, as an industry, we're not the quickest to adopt technology. And that's one of the things that we found in this state of is it's still a little surprising. Over half the industry is still doing things in a very non-technologically sound sort of ways. Lots of paper is still very common. What I refer to as digital paper. Sometimes people are like, oh no, we're not paper, but really they've replicated their file cabinet in a folder tree structure. That's still, and they still print things out and sign it and scan it, and then that's still paper, folks. But there's a lot of purpose-built solutions out there for a lot of things, not just for quality management systems. But I guess I'm curious, why have we as an industry been so slow to embrace technology?
Just a quick comment. I had actually a conversation this morning. I think the answer is because it's good enough, or that's how they see it. I was talking to a friend of mine who is an engineer. He lives in an R&D department in a small 50-plus employees medical device company, Class 1 devices primarily. He said, last year we had 3 complaints. There were small risks, nothing that affected the bottom line. What we have, which is a legacy paper quality system, was good enough. I think what they're not seeing is the things that aren't being picked up, right? That aren't coming and breaking the surface of the water. So I think that's the problem. Is if I believe that my system is good enough, I'm not going to actually go through the change management required to implement best-in-class solutions. And that's a scary mindset because you're missing a lot of things that aren't breaking the surface and could ultimately lead to harm to patients and obviously other issues that build up and over time will become huge disruptors to your business. So that's my thought around that.
Yeah, I'll chime in. Audits are real, guys. I know we hear about them. Some folks have gone from company to company and never experienced an audit. We've been involved in multiple audits over the last couple of years. And it wasn't that the company was, when they didn't do well in the audit, it was well-intentioned people. They were using legacy systems, paper systems with no traceability, and it was usually done by people that were previously at the company. That institutional knowledge goes right out the door. New people come in, and they sort of assume that things are working, and hey, we haven't had our compliance meeting. There's no way to really track those things, and we are way beyond that. We're just now getting into podcasts and YouTube channels, and we're way behind in a lot of areas. But you really need technology to manage the quality piece, or you're going to find yourself, regardless of whether you're, what class of device you're in, you're going to have a very difficult time in audit without having some type of system.
I think a lot of it is also fear of change, that if there is no change, then the FDA doesn't need to weigh in on it. So processes, techniques often stagnate because there's a fear of the ripple effect. But in that survey that you conducted, one of the most shocking things to me was that only 15% of the respondents felt that quality was going to be a competitive advantage for the next year. And that was just stunning to me because quality is it's what allows you to do the new features. It's what allows you to innovate. So it was shocking because the converse is not true. Of the companies that have had recent recalls, 100% of them will consider a quality gap to be a competitive disadvantage.
I was interested, did you collect data on those companies that were previously audited or had certain risk issues prior? I didn't see that report.
I don't know that was part of the surveys, but I have to. Nick says no, but 500 folks participated. I would have to assume just by normal, sampling and things that there's probably a fair amount of folks that had that experience too.
The only reason I'm bringing it up is because Randy makes a good point. Is I don't think really comes to the forefront of your mind until you've had problems, right? And you're reactionary. It's like, well, shit, I just got audited. I'm in trouble. Now all of a sudden, quality has become an asset in my business. Prior to that, it's just another thing that I can forget about and focus on Gen 2 in the product.
Yeah, I mean, and one of the things I wanted to just chime in on something that Kevin shared. I mean, I talk to so many startups, and they don't think they're going to be inspected by the FDA. And you can believe that myth all that you want until the day that the FDA calls you and says, we're going to be on site for your baseline inspection audit Tuesday at 8 a.m. Does that work for you? And you know, you could say, no, Wednesday would be better, but you can't say, no, it doesn't work for me, we're not doing it, because it's part of the rules of playing the game of medical device. And, you know, and I was talking to some folks, FDA is a lot more collaborative with the industry, but an FDA inspection, it's still an FDA inspection. It's gonna feel very contentious. I guess, who's been through an FDA inspection? And if you have not, hang on, keep your hands up for a moment. If you have not, talk to the people who have their hands up if you don't believe me. I'm sure they can corroborate some of my stories. So before we leave this topic of technology, Tommy, again, you know, the wise person here who's kind of seen everything, what do you think is the obstacle? Why are people slow to adopt technology?
Well, I think it's the momentum, and they just don't want to change. And I think that companies that have a very high management commitment to quality can manage a system that is a legacy-based system. But I think some of those that are committed to quality are probably more likely to switch over to technology and state-of-the-art technology because their commitment to quality, they think that purchase and that move will improve their quality. But I've seen people who can run the paper-based systems, the legacy systems, and do a real good job, but the key is management buy-in, management commitment to quality.
And as long as those people never go on vacation or never have a sick day and are there during your FDA inspection, all is good, right? So you'll make it. I mean, I have too. I mean, you gotta have the right mindset. But the thing, you know, frankly, the reason that drove me to starting Greenlight Guru is I am an engineer. I paid a shit ton of money for my engineering education. My parents had asked me, what do you do? And I had to tell them, I update spreadsheets. Like that is not what an engineer wants to do. I want to design cool medical devices that are going to save lives, right? But I spent so much of my time literally pushing piles of paper, getting the red folder change order because it was urgent. You all know some of you might know what a red folder process is. Maybe it was a green folder in your company, but literally walking around a change order to update a drawing so that you can make it to this new specification because you got a complaint or something, and having to walk it for 6 different people to sign in your company, track them down. And I did that way too many times. I think this is crazy. This is really crazy. And so I like, there's got to be a better way, and that's what led me to start Greenlight Guru. All right, so we covered a lot of ground. A couple things that I want to dive into a little bit deeper. We talked about risk a little bit. I think that's important. So, Tommy, you said something earlier about risk management being important, and I think you gave a really compelling case for that. But any other things that you can elaborate on from a risk management perspective? Because I think a lot, it's unnatural for a lot of folks to like. I think a lot of times they think risk, I have to write it down. It's really a thought process though, isn't it?
Well, it is a process, identifying all those risks and rating them and mitigating them. But from a risk viewpoint, doing that process provides you value and creates situations that can help you. But risk management, to me, this whole process means that I've got it covered. If something goes wrong, it's part of my insurance policy. If things go wrong in an OR, they're going to come after everybody who has a piece of equipment in there. And if you've done your processes and you can identify all those risks and you've documented how you mitigated this, then you have proof to show that you've you've done your job, and you're gonna be the one that says, hey, it was me, and you'll have a good case to make for that. So risk management is something that it remains, it stays with your processes all the way through when your products in the field. If you aren't getting that feedback or your complaints or your customers and applying that back to your risk management, then you're not closing that loop and making that a big part of your product. So that, I mean, I have a client that he's a one-man show. He doesn't have four walls. It's just him, and he runs it out of his office. And this is how that whole thing works. He called me in November and says, all right, so have you got all the risk, all of the complaints reviewed, and have you written me my reports so we can get the audit done, so we can have our management review report done and done a meeting before the end of the year. And that's what his commitment is. It's a small company, but we do that and we identify what needs to be done and track it, the changes for the rest of the next year. So we kind of do that closed loop control, but it's so simple. One of the things that was interesting was he doesn't have a CAPA as part of his SOPs. The FDA came in and said, you don't have CAPA. And then we explained how we did it. She said, went back to her boss. She came back and said, you're covered. So you can do it as long as remember it's what's good for your product and what is adequate for your company and your system.
I would add that risk management is where, and this is a plug for all these guys sitting up here on the panel, is where experience comes in. I think it's really challenging for a startup company to dream up what's going to happen and have a strategy around that particular risk. And if you work with products that are in a similar field or have a similar indication, having one of these people on your team is priceless.
Similar to having a distributed philosophy of quality, we like to have a distributed philosophy of risk management. And we consider, I love 14,971. I'm a geek, I'm sorry. But one of the things that's great about it is you begin to see that even your product is a risk management. It is a mitigation. You're trying to relieve a condition or provide an improvement to a therapy that a previous product didn't do. And if you begin to think of it that way, your features become risk management. Your, of course, safety standards become risk management. Problems need to be mitigated. But really the problem you're trying to solve in medical technology is a risk mitigation. So if we begin spreading that philosophy, then it becomes part of the fabric of everything we do. Most importantly, stick to what's important. Don't get caught in dust risk management, because that's a waste of everybody's time and it distracts you from the important stuff. So we have to focus on that important risk management stuff, and that's where also traceability comes in, being able to see how you've flowed through all the way through and proven that your mitigations were effective.
Yeah, and I see CEO founder, CEO founder, CEO founder, CEO president, CEO founder, founder, CEO. I see all these people in the audience. There is a lot more management responsibility for compliance, not only because you're the founder of the technology, but the rules have changed, not only with EU MDR, but with all of the compliance and regulatory guidelines. You're responsible. It's not your quality person that you may or may not have listened to. It's on you. And I've sat there before and had to go through those friendly audits with, non-FDA audits. I've gone through FDA audits. Been part of a 483 and a warning letter process very early in my career. That's a very difficult thing to sit through. Again, audits are real. Management responsibility is real.
Yeah, I heard this phrase once that a CEO of a medical device company is also the CJO. Have you guys heard this? Anybody know what CJO is? Chief Jailable Officer. So do keep that in mind, and hopefully it never happens to you. But risk is one of those.
You are bad at jokes, John.
Yeah. My kids say that I tell dad jokes. They might say I tell bad jokes, but I think I heard they tell dad jokes. They just get worse. Anyway, but risk is one of those things that I love 14971 too, and I know it's weird to say. So, and I'm not going to ask how many of you. None of you are throwing anything at me, so that's good. But I think a lot of people hate risk management, not necessarily the mindset, but I think the practice. And I think they hate the practice because sorry folks, your practices suck. And here's where I think they suck. Because we've been conditioned as an industry to do FMEAs that are 400 line items in length, right? And it doesn't make any sense because we do it so late in the process. We don't do what Tommy suggests and start to evaluate the hazardous situations early on. I think we make our lives miserable as med device professionals. We feel like we have to do this FMEA, and we do it after we've got prototypes and maybe right around the verification. That's way too late, and it's no value add. And so now we hate risk because of our tools. I mean, I don't know, I'm curious. Any you all experience that?
Yeah, I mean, it feels at times like it's more of a checkbox. You're doing this because you have to pass the test, as opposed to actually implementing a quality system from the beginning or the mindset of quality. So, I mean, I remember sitting through the FMEA, 3 hours, chugging through what I think the risks are, and it's painful. And you're doing it, it's like the non-fun part. We talk about brainstorming, to dream up new ideas and come up with product ideas and kind of have fun, and then the serious work comes in when we start implementing quality and regulatory, et cetera. So I totally agree, but I think it's because we have this checkbox mentality. It's not implemented from the beginning.
Right.
And if you don't do a good job with it, so when you go to the test house, they ask for at least 3 things: your user's manual, your design master record, something along those lines, and your risk management. And they go through and review that, and then they come back and critique it and tell you where you messed that up. So if you had a whole long list of those, you're going to have to go back and correct all those before you can get back into the test house.
Yeah, and to Lance's point, we treated it probably as a checkbox anyway, because we got to hurry up and get to testing, and we probably did it way later than we should have, and it didn't really add a lot of value. We're just trying to satisfy some sort of requirement.
Yeah, and if the state doesn't scare you, that means the audit and the FDA and management responsibilities. Then think about it like the carrot. So the carrot of this is the average amount that a medical device, an emerging medical device company operates on is $2.5 million a year. Now, I know a lot of the people in this room are going, "Wow, if I had $2.5 million, I could do a lot of things." But after you've raised your Series A, your Series B, and you're doing things, it's roughly about $2.5 million. And you think about, okay, if I didn't build quality into the system beforehand, and I get 2 years down the road, and something happens, and I've got to go back and re-implement a new system, electronic QMS system, and it holds me up 3 months. You think about this with like drug manufacturers, and you can quantify every day that you don't get to market, it's $1 billion or something. But for that med device manufacturer, it could be hundreds of thousands of dollars. But just even in your internal burn, it's going to cost you maybe $50,000 to $100,000. There's all this overhead that you don't necessarily appreciate having to go back and redo it, when a few $1,000 would have saved all of that headache on the front end.
Not to mention can constrain your exit opportunities if you have to resuscitate your DHF. They're like, I'm not going through all this work myself. So it can end your dreams of the exit opportunities.
One of the most powerful things that the risk management process can do is drive your architecture, where you're using it in real time at the beginning of your project to begin to realize where are you going to isolate the most important risk, and what are the things you're going to push out of risk mitigations. And you want to see something that will suck the life and soul out of a software engineer. It's have them doing a software FMEA on something where the software didn't need to be Class C.
Yeah, and I want to kind of chime in on a couple of things that you said. I mean, it is important to think about. I mean, because the inspection or the audit, if they come in and find something that you need to do, that's going to take your resources away from the other things that they're doing. Maybe building a new product. Nope, put that on hold. Now come back and fix the thing that you didn't do the first time. How expensive is that? And then if you get a warning letter or a recall, I mean, these things are crazy expensive and capital intensive. And for a young company, if you get one of those, it could be catastrophic. So I think embracing that quality mindset is really important. All right, so the last thing I want to touch on very briefly, because I know we could do a whole panel on just this topic alone, is regulatory. And then after we cover that, I thought we'd open it up to some Q&A from the audience. But, and it's Pandora's box a little bit here. So we'll just leave it at that. What do you feel, how do you feel about the regulatory landscape these days? How is it helping or hurting our industry?
Well, I'll jump in. From one aspect, you have medical devices leading with like 13485 and all of the things that you're having to do to be compliant under that particular regulations. Much different than drugs. Drugs are very vague in a lot of instances, and so we talk about this all the time. I think you guys are going to talk about EU MDR, and they still are trying to figure out what's going on with the EU MDR. I'm going to bow out of that one and just listen to the podcast. But I do think things are becoming much more aligned. You've seen the FDA become much more thoughtful with regards to their predicates, like it or not. Only looking at more recent predicates and not old predicates. I think there is a lot of cleanup that they need to do around the 510K space. No offense to anybody that has a 510K device, but there's been a lot of companies out there that have been approved off of predicates that they probably shouldn't have been. So I like that particular area. And I like the fact that they're also looking at post-marketing requirements as well, because it's really tough in a controlled environment to really understand how a device performs. And so I think, looking at the data that they're going to collect from a post-marketing standpoint, which means you got to have all your quality software in place early on. It's going to carry you all the way through post-marketing. But looking at it and collecting that post-marketing data is really smart.
I guess I don't like talking about regulatory too much, but I guess I'm one of those that thinks the FDA is not your friend, and I don't think they're an enemy. In fact, they are a very necessary organization. But I've been sort of surprised at the initiatives that they've done, the de novo and other things in that nature, so that they're trying to offer more pathways. They seem to be more trying to help the industry get more products through. I will tell you, working with some Europeans a few years ago, I never thought of it this way because I thought it was just the FDA, but they were totally cowed by the FDA. So I guess what's happened over there is now the EU and their MDR, they're trying to outdo the FDA, but outside of that, I am encouraged by some of the things the FDA said. I'm surprised I'm saying that.
No, I mean, totally, I agree with you. I mean, and think about the awesome responsibility that the FDA has. I mean, their job is to protect and promote the health of U.S. citizens with, the medical devices that we're all working on. I mean, if a bad thing happens with a medical device, that's, the FDA is maligned and drugged through the mud because how dare you make that decision? So it's an awesome responsibility that an FDA reviewer and branch chief and all the folks there have to do. And as my parents are getting a little bit older and they're going through some health procedures, and I'm starting to appreciate them more and more. And to your point too, Tommy, I think they're being much more progressive, at least within a regulatory framework, right? So they're trying to be more collaborative with med device companies, programs like the de novo, programs like pre-submissions, things of that nature. Like back when I started 22 years ago, it was a throw it over the wall and cross your fingers and hope that you got good news from the FDA in somewhere between 90 and 180 days. You didn't dare engage them on purpose.
And not to mention they're proactively seeking out informal conversations with our startups that we're starting to see, and that's really encouraging. So before you're ready for that pre-sub or that Q-sub, can I talk to one person at the FDA who has some idea as to what my technology does? And it's been incredible for our accelerator.
And you know, again, things like data sharing, open, FDA, or they have an API where you can grab data and pull it in, all very progressive. They are an arbitrary and capricious organization. I mean, it is difficult to understand them at times, and maybe if we get some more guidance on like breakthrough device designations and get more info about what qualifies and what doesn't, I know it'll make a lot of our clients happy. But you know, that said, I do see positive signs with regards to working with the FDA.
All right. Any other thoughts on it? No. Okay. All right. So I got to hand one of these microphones to Nick, and he's going to find somebody to stump the panel.
Who's got a question? All right, we got one back here.
Hi, I just had a question in regards to when and how early a startup should start implementing the quality management systems. Obviously, it's important to make sure that there's quality in your quality management system. You take your time to do it, but at the same time, startups want to remain agile, quick, and get to market faster. What kind of tips and tricks do you have in advice for all the startups here on how to manage that without impeding their timelines, but at the same time not sacrificing the quality of their business?
So, a couple of things. There are some things you have to do at first. And I mentioned some of them. You need to do a project development plan. You need to do a product specification and get a draft of that. And you need to do your hazard situation list and do your risk management. The thing you want to do from then on is cheap. You want to not do all that formal documentation. You want to do enough documentation for your design history file. But we as engineers cheat a little bit in that we try to do things and build prototypes and fail as quickly as we can and learn what works and what doesn't and get to the end, and then we already know how to write the test report and get the results. But that's our quickest way of getting there. So it's the iteration process. Don't try to over-theorize it, and don't try to document everything to the degree that, for instance, have you reports. You need to put things in your design history file. So some reports I write so that I write them so that if I come back a year from now, I can follow what I did. And then there's another level of report that I write that if I wrote it, then someone skilled in the art can come back and read it and do what I did. And then there's a third level, and that's the one that I'm reporting out to the FDA, and it might go into the 510K. That one's totally formalized and signed off by everyone. So there's things like that that you can do. But you don't want to do your documentation until you finish your beta prototypes and you're about to go into testing. Then you want to get all that documentation finalized, ready to go, signed off, and you want all your testing done. Because you're about to go spend a whole lot of money on testing, a lot. And you want to know what the product is, what's in there, so what all the specifications for all the components and everything there, and what testing it met. So that when it gets into that testing, you go, okay, you've got to change this, it failed this. You can circle back and make your changes under control. So that's the way to get there as quickly as possible, in my view.
I agree with everything that Tommy said. Let me just add a few more tips to that. I think the term design control confuses people. I remember many times, many companies that I've worked with along the way, where you have this, you have some latitude to where when design control starts within your company, and there's this, I think, conventional wisdom says I want to draw that line as late as possible. Well, conventionalism, remember, is wrong. There's actually a benefit to hitting into a design control framework early. Now, again, some people may say that's painful. Well, if that's painful, then you did it wrong. You should be capturing your user needs or your user stories, or however you call it, whatever you call that in your world. You should be capturing those. And they don't have to be set in stone. And they don't have to be complete and holistic. They can iterate, and especially being agile, you may be, testing some things, doing some final tests on some aspects of your product and still trying to define the user needs on other aspects, and that's perfectly okay. But documenting that in a, I'll say, a controlled manner is important because you want to be able to tell that story. So by the time you get to the point where you're doing that formal testing to support your submissions, you already know what the story is, and you have sort of the traceability that goes along with that. Last thing I'll say is, from a quality system standpoint, always build it as you go. Keep it simple, keep it minimal. I think one person said 4 procedures, the other person said 7. That's about right. You don't need to overthink this. Design control, risk, document management, supplier management. Yeah, more or less that's it, right?
Just to add, I think when you are agile, it's particularly the important part to when you should be documenting, because you need to know why you made the changes you made the changes or push changes in the first place. And if you don't have the documentation there to help support that, it's institutional learning can be lost very easily.
Right, and I agree. Well, my first advice is go on and understand the principles of 13485. If you understand the principles, that'll help you a whole lot. And then if it's too much of a burden for one person to bear, then bring someone alongside who can help bring it in incrementally. In the early stages, the most important thing that you get out of a quality system, and it can be really light, is that you're capturing knowledge. You don't have to control things. You don't have to say, this is our design inputs, and we're going to keep revving it every month. But instead, just keep capturing more information, capture that knowledge. You will find that that is a valuable asset.
Alrighty, thank you, everyone. Any other questions on here? No?
So I have probably more of a comment to reinforce everything you guys have said. So great comments all the way through. But I'm going to bring up a word that, in a perspective that you might not have thought of, and it's heard or thought about, is lawsuits. And so when you go through all this process, I run a human factors engineering firm, and we help medical device companies get to market, but I also get called in as an expert witness when good products go bad. And the first thing I do, I go back to the very beginning with companies and look at their design process. I look at the design controls they chose, the user risks and how they identified them. How did they go through the iterative design process and document their changes and how they were buying down risk? And then when they go to market, did they do their market surveillance? What did they know? When did they know it? And how did they address it?
I'd like to respond to that. Having been in that position as well, that is the stick side. The carrot is also true. Last May, the executive at Medtronic in charge of mergers and acquisitions said that the number one thing that is the no-go decider is the quality system of the potential company they're acquiring. So while lawsuits are certainly terrifying, at the same time, if you have a positive exit strategy, your quality system is the first thing that may be a discriminator.
All right, yep.
I think my question should have come immediately before the last one. But I've chatted to a few people tonight, and they work for very small medical device companies, startups. And having audited a lot of these companies, I find that the best management reviews, design reviews, risk management reviews take place over the water cooler. So how do you recommend to these companies where they have lots of smart scientists, dynamic engineers who really don't want to be constrained by your fancy quality systems to prepare themselves going forward?
Well, I think it's a good point. You know, if it's happening over at the water cooler conversation, or in the break room or what have you, that's where people are comfortable, and that's you're getting the truth. But I think a lot of times people, when they think about preparing for audits and management reviews, it's like I have to do something different than what I did the day before. And I think that's the problem. It should be the same. Like, I should not have to change anything that I'm doing because tomorrow the ISO auditor is coming, or because tomorrow the FDA inspector is coming. great, bring it on. Because if I have embraced the culture of quality and the importance that it brings to my business, then none of these things are challenges for me, because this is how I operate on a daily basis. But I know that doesn't really answer your question. Maybe you just carry a notepad or an audio recorder or something along those lines, capture the date and time and who you talk to, and build the artifact and circulate it for review and approval. If you find that to be more effective, then I see no harm in doing that. Just document what you did.
It comes with spreading that quality philosophy across the company so that every engineer is thinking, I am producing quality, I'm capturing quality knowledge. When I realize that this little circuit or this line of code is actually going to reduce a risk, I've got to have a tool or a process or something so that it's in part of my everyday flow. I don't have to go tell Phil to update the TPS cover sheet or whatever. I just put it as part of my daily work. So part of it is integrating those tools, integrating the flow, and that starts by integrating the philosophy.
Yeah, I mean, taking it even back further, I think it starts with basic education. The company that I was speaking to this morning, 50 folks, he said probably 2 people, this is the head of the R&D department, probably 2 people understand the function and purpose of a QMS. People are contributing to it every single day, but they don't really understand its purpose and its function. And so I think it starts with, like you mentioned, you have to have everybody on the same page, and that starts with fundamental education of what a QMS is responsible for.
And I'll just jump on. If you're building a product today like you did 20 years ago, stop doing it.